Hello, it's me again, back from 2 months of being disappeared. I'm sorry, I don't know how long it's been. I've been busy, and I finally managed to make a video. It's really warm though. I want to be outside. So I made some grass, some basic grass. It's not finished because I'm doing everything up to a certain standard and then stopping so that I can then work everything up together. It's quite a good practice to have. You don't just like finish an asset and then move on to the next asset and finish that asset. If you work everything up to a block out and then up to a sort of semi-finished state and then do everything in passes, everything becomes a lot more consistent. Anyway, that's a whole different story. I'm going to show a quick process of how I made my grass. First, it'll be a time lapse of me just like placing the grass in its block out form, and then I'm going to do a little bit of texturing to a basic level, as I said. No hand painting yet, just bakes and overlaying bakes. And then the grass at the level I'm happy with will be in, and then I'm going to move on to sculpting the grave. Which I won't go into too much detail on because I'm not an expert. You can go to other people for that, but you can kind of see what I'm thinking and I'll talk through that a tiny bit. So I hope you enjoy and thank you for your patience. So what you've just seen me doing is taking a very long texture, I believe about 256 by 1024, and I have added a gradient to that and just drawn in some basic grass shapes for my for how I imagine my grass will look. I want to keep it really simple, so you can see it here now in 3ds Max with an alpha applied. I've tried to keep the grass to quite a consistent style, so consistently curved shapes and variation of heights, so you don't just want all the grass to be one height, whether that's short or tall. And a variation of groups of 2, groups of 3, and even groups of 1 blade of grass. And when I take that into 3ds Max, I'm just breaking that up into the sections of grass that I will create. So I'm not making super low poly grass here. It's quite high poly. It's a personal project. I am of the belief that you want to have fun on your personal projects. So I've made the grass quite high poly. I've subdivided it 3 times for each section of grass, and then I've just used bend modifier to bend it over, so that in addition to the bend that I've actually drawn onto the grass mesh itself also bends, and I'm just adding some variation in how much each one bends. If they all bent the same amount, or if none of them bent at all, you'd get some very strange looking grass. And then here now, I am just also bending the grass in the other direction as well, so it not only folds over forwards but it also bends round. So this means that the grass, no matter what angle you look at it from, it will be visible in some way. You're not going to completely lose it from one angle because it's curved over to create a sort of half moon shape that will, as you rotate around it, always be visible in some way, shape or form. So next, all I have to do is take my models into Unreal Engine and place them. It is not something that's quick because I'm not using some sort of automatic foliage paintbrush, and I'm just placing very small groups of grass at once. But once you get like 3 or 4 pieces of grass down, you can sort of group them and start moving them around in clumps. And all I'm doing is just trying to place them in a way that is not too overwhelming, so I don't want thousands upon thousands of grass blades. And then later on I can add more once I've sort of finalised the grass a little bit. But for now I just want to get a few in and get a feel for what works and what doesn't. And we'll take it from there. I won't bore you with the details of grass placement. I imagine that placing grass blades is very much like the 3D art equivalent of watching paint dry. But you can see generally what I'm doing. I'm placing grass, and I'm playing about as well with putting in simple grass wind shader, so I can basically fine tune how I want the grass to wobble, because that's what simple grass wind does, is just make stuff wobble. I want it to be quite slow and relaxed looking. So I tweak the values basically, is all I'm doing here. I'm playing about with the very limited options that you have with simple grass wind. While I'm doing all of this, I've got in mind that I plan on having the grass with vertex color applied in the future. So hopefully we'll get some nice color variation in the grass as well, even though the model is the same. And you can also see here that I got a bit sneaky with the grass shader actually, and made a second grass shader that's just flat black, unlit. And that means that I can get some edges to my diorama, because obviously at some point I'm going to have to create some idea for how the edge would look. And it occurred to me that I could actually just match the black background with black grass, and that gives me it means I don't have the harsh cutoff point that I currently have, and it's also quite dynamic. And we'll see if I stick with that, but at the moment I kind of like it. It's dynamic, it's moving, it matches in with the rest of the scene. It kind of gives the idea that there's more to the scene. You've got this silhouetted grass at the edge where it might peter off into some, I don't know, some more parts of the scene that aren't included in the diorama, but it gives the impression something is there. So I don't know, we'll keep it maybe, we'll see, but for now at least it works just fine. So now I've got my test grass finished, got positions that I quite like. What I want to do is make a basic high poly mesh for the grass. Now it's a fine balance because I don't want the grass to become too overcomplicated and have too much information, because I want this scene to be quite simple. I think I know how I'm going to go about that. So what I'm going to do is get 3ds Max, and this here is my test sheet of my texture. So it's very long, I think it's 256 by 1024, whatever it is. And I'm going to use this as a template to create my high poly mesh. So I'm going to do that using splines. So I set that up so that it renders in viewport, and I'm just going to test the thickness that I want. So that's too thin, obviously. So maybe I'll try 3. Maybe a bit thicker. 5. Yep, that should do it, I think. Yep. And I want there to be 4 sides. And that's all I need for now. So I'll just trace the shape. 4 sides. Trace the shape of the grass that I've already created. Nothing too high poly or anything like that. Just follow the curve of the grass. You can see from above it looks like a diamond shape. I don't want these lines here, so I'm just going to remove these unnecessary edges. And I'm just going to select the outer edges. I mean, you can do grass anyway. This is just how I've chosen to do it, and it might turn out that it doesn't work at all, but we'll see. I'll probably cut it out of the video if it doesn't. Just loop that, and then I'm going to chamfer. Maybe 4 times. That kind of works. And what I'm going to do next before I do anything else actually is drag these out to match the silhouettes I'd already created. And what I'm trying to do is make it so that the chamfered edges are obviously the edges of my grass, and we can get some nice smoothing out of that. And then I want this here to behave as my sort of the central vein down the center of the grass blade. That's what that will be. Okay, so what I've done is created pieces that are vaguely grass shaped. They are quite low poly at the moment, apart from the chamfered edges. But before I deal with those chamfered edges, I want to create my vein down the center. So that involves, if you ever pick up a piece of grass, you'll see that it is folded in the middle. So there's no dark line or any, like in leaves, there's no veins in there. It's a folded piece. I'm talking like generic grass that you find on the floor. So I want to get that kind of thing because I think it will avoid the grass looking too cluttered and overwhelming in the scene. So I'm going to test that and just see how it looks. So I'm going to select the center pieces of my grass and loop it. And then I'm going to, I think I will pull them together like so. And then drag them back so my grass is folded in the middle. Maybe push them apart a bit more so the grass is still thick. And pull it out to maybe there. So yeah, that kind of looks like folded grass pieces. Pull it a bit more. Cool, and I want to retain that in my high poly, so I'm just gonna chamfer these pieces, but keep the chamfer quite tight this time. Probably don't need 4. Okay. So that's my grass with the center line. To be honest, I think the chamfer could actually be a bit more clear. The fold, I mean, the fold could be clearer. So I'm actually going to pull it back even more. You tend to need to emphasize stuff in high polys anyway. And then just chamfer that again. Cool, that's a bit better. Okay. So now I need to deal with these tops and bottoms of my grass. And the quite obviously polygonal edges. So what I will do is just chamfer these. So I'll just select one loop from each piece of grass and then just ring around. Okay. Maybe 2 chamfers. We don't want any overlap. 2 will do. And I'm just going to drag out any loops that I think look a bit weird in places. And these grass blades probably don't want to be overlapping too much. Cool. Okay, now the top of the grass. So how am I going to deal with this? To be honest, I might just pull them in like this and go from there. It's hacky. It's definitely not a proper high poly model, but at least then I have something I can work with and just see what happens. So some of my grass is looking a little bit funny in places. Anything that looks too weird, I can basically just tidy up using the alpha. Like I can just sort of cut into it and make the grass look like it's been eaten by things, and just sort of hide things that I've done wrong. Story of my life. We just want the tip of the grass to just curve up consistently rather than suddenly going to a point like it has been in some places like this one. Could maybe do to get the bases of the grass blades to all be at the same point rather than different heights right now. So I'm just going to select all of these. And just flatten those out. maybe sort these guys out a little. It's a bit better. And I probably want to delete the bottom faces of the grass too. Cool. You can just use FFD modifiers to pull stuff around that you're not happy with. Like that. To be honest, I could have just done this entire thing with FFD modifiers. But hey, it's done now. If you don't know what FFD modifiers are, learn about them, because they're really important. Okay. And then I've slapped a turbo smooth modifier on there too. So I've made some really basic, super basic grass that follows the general shape of my low poly there. What I could do is push these just to make them a bit chunkier looking. Push just basically pushes out from the point that it was originally, so you can see it just pushes out directly from your original mesh. So if you push far enough, the mesh actually begins to push into itself, as you can see there. But it kind of creates a nice pinching effect at the center of the grass. So that is my grass high poly. And this is my grass low poly. Because I'm just gonna bake onto a plane, flat. So I'll bake that down and see how it looks. Okay, so I've brought my textures into Unreal Engine and applied them to my grass material. Now it's very subtle and it's something that you have to support using your albedo textures. But if we go looking close to the grass, you can see that with just the normal map and the same albedo texture as was on before, it creates this just very subtle 3-dimensional sense to the grass. Makes it feel a bit more real, even though we're going for a stylized kind of look. It's especially clear if you can get the light falling on the grass. So what I'm going to do now is just apply a bit more interest to the albedo, just to support the normal map a bit. And we'll see how that looks. Again, we don't want it to go too overkill, so it's a bit like noisy, but I think we can do something with it to make it just stand out a little bit more than it is at the moment. So I will apply, I tend to overlay maps like curvature maps and ambient occlusion maps. So I will bake some of those out and overlay those. I've overlaid my maps, and so this is what the grass looks like now. Definitely not finished, but it's got a bit more punch to it now. You don't have to be right up close with it in a certain light to actually see that it's got a sort of three-dimensional form to it. So this is my Photoshop document. It's very simple. This is the colour that we had beforehand when I was just doing some tests, and I've taken my bake and multiplied it over. So that when I say my bake, I take what I got in substance. So in substance, what I've done is I've taken a white base layer, overlaid my cavity at 26% opacity, and then overlaid my ambient occlusion as a multiply at 90% opacity. And it just gives me the maps that I need all in one place, which I can export and then overlay it as a multiply 100%. This green channel layer adds just like a little highlight on top of the grass, gives it sort of a top-down lighting. What I've done to get that is I've taken my normal map, gone to channels, taken the green channel, and just Control A, Control C on there, and then pasted that into my albedo. And then if you invert that, you can see that it gets the lighting coming down from the top. So it gives you top-down lighting, and that is all I have here. So that's what it looked like when I first put it on. You can see the sort of black tip on the very top of the grass. If you invert it with Control I, it just gives the grass the appearance of being lit from the top. And that's all I have for now. So if I go back to Unreal, this is what it looks like. So like I said, it's not finished, but it's at a stage where I'm going to leave it for now. Things that I will do to it are I will hand paint over it, because at the end of the day this is a hand painted scene and all I've done at the moment is overlay bakes together. I want to make sure that the bottom of the grass here is not very dark in comparison to the base that it will be on. We want everything to be cohesive. So if you have a very dark green base that the grass is going to be on, you don't want your grass blades to be a lighter shade of green, because that just looks ugly. You want everything to be very cohesive and look like as it would in nature, like it is all one thing. So hand painted the grass, make sure that it fits in with the base that it will be on. Of course the base isn't finished yet either. And then I will also by hand cut into the shape of the alpha a little bit if I feel I need to, like I said, to make the grass look like it's been eaten by things, or it's just, you know, naturally been bashed up a little bit. And that'll just give the silhouette a bit more interest rather than it just being a perfectly tubular shape as it is at the moment. So that's the grass as it is for now. Happy with where it is, it'll do. It's still not perfect, but what I'm doing here is I'm working everything up at a consistent level. So I'll do everything up to a certain level, and then I'll come back in and polish it so that everything is very consistent. Everything's been done with the same style while I'm in the same state of mind, because it's very easy if I did the rocks, finished them all 2 months ago, and then came back to the grass, I might have forgotten how I did it. I might not be able to get into the same mindset. So it's really good to just be able to do everything together and bring it up at a consistent level. So next I will sculpt into the gravestone, I think. And after that it will be on to the vase and so on. So I'll leave the grass there for now, and I will get this block out of a gravestone into ZBrush and do some work on that.